If you're not moving forward in life, you're moving backwards. This is Ace and Jamie, and this is Breakpoint Podcast.
Our goal is to create and deliver content that evokes a change of spirit and heart, seeking out messages that will relate and inspire.
Stories and experiences of people and their breakpoint in life.
Little rough around the edges, completely unhinged, and wildly compassionate.
We bring you Breakpoint Podcast.
Let's kick it off.
Hey, what's going on, guys? We have Brian here. He has an awesome, amazing story. He is a cancer survivor. Literally went from he didn't think he was going to live, all types of altercations with what was going to go on with his body. Made the right decisions, went from the bottom. Then he slowly grew, became a not just a survivor, but someone who could share his story with many people, and he'll get into that. But then became, as you can see, a firefighter. Just became an EMT. And he decided to turn his life around and say, how can I give back to the world? How can I give back to the community? And how can I continue to do that? And he's in his pursuit right now to actually become state police, I believe, or a Suffolk County or Nassau County cop. So he's just huge heart, wants to give back, trying to find the best way to do it. So we really just wanted to have him on today to kind of share his story a little bit on where he was, where he's going, hopefully impact some of the people that, if you're a cancer survivor, if you have any type of disease, maybe in these recent times, maybe a family member is experiencing COVID right now, and you just need some hope. You just need to hear that story of overcoming to become. That's why we wanted to have Brian here, because it's the perfect time to have that. Plus, he's right in the belly of the beast, dealing with all this COVID-19 type stuff. So we will talk a little bit about that towards the end of the call as well, Brian. But awesome to have you on the show, man.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate you having me on. Super excited to share, just my life, the story of Brian Goff, how I almost didn't make it to, here I am making it and doing things that I never thought I'd be able to do. So I know we're kind of going to have a little bit of a dialogue going on here. So if you guys want to stop me, in between, ask some questions, you want me to dive deeper into something.
Yeah. Brian, let's just jump right into it, man. You had cancer at how old were you how did it happen? Did you see it coming? Your parents took you to the doctor? How old were you when this all kind of came about?
Sure. So just a quick background on that, right? I'm 25 years old now. So in 2005, April 2005, was having some severe leg pain. I have two brothers and a sister, so my parents were always busy with a bunch of rugrats running around. So I used to play football at the time, was going to practice, playing games, and just being a kid at the time, busting myself up all the time. I had some leg pain. They didn't really think too much of it. They have two other sons and a daughter. So they were kind of like, brush it off, you'll get better. And some time passed, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month and a half. The pain got really bad throbbing pain, just wouldn't go away, worse by the day. Eventually they took me to the doctor where he recommended I go get an x-ray. So April, the beginning of April, I went right off the bat, went and got an x-ray. We took that x-ray back to my pediatrician. He threw it up on the board. And actually, I was in school when they went over all of it. I got pulled out of school. I was in the middle of 5th grade, elementary school, finishing up elementary school. And I remember I remember it vividly today, sitting in class, and my teacher's phone rang. She picks up the phone, and not even 30 seconds after she picked up the phone, she looked directly at me sitting in my seat. And I knew I went to the doctor, and they seemed like they were nervous. So at 10 years old, I don't know what to think, but I knew something wasn't right. And just had that really severe gut feeling that something was wrong. And my teacher called me and said, "Hey, listen, your parents are here to pick you up." I started bawling down, crying. I walked out, and my entire family was outside of New Lane Elementary School, the beginning of April. And immediately my family's crying, I'm crying, and we don't even know what's wrong yet. We just know something's wrong. So they took me to the doctor. Immediately you could tell I had a severe bone tumor in my entire left femur. That day they sent me to Stony Brook Cancer Center to meet the pediatric oncologist, which I met, and it was a very fast process. The next day I met my surgeon, Dr. Samuel Kanan, my hero. The day after that, I got a Metaport put in, and I was on chemotherapy. So 3 days after figuring something was wrong, I immediately started a aggressive chemotherapy, which is 4 different kinds. So that was April 18th, 2005 was my initial diagnosis date. And yeah, I mean, I went through 3 months of chemotherapy, and then in order to basically save my life, they removed my entire left femur. It was called limb sparing surgery. So what they actually did was they stopped the chemotherapy for 2 weeks to let my body heal back up. I have actually a picture that I can kind of show of what I look like in the process. And my body was just so weak at the time that there was no way that I'd possibly be able to undergo that type of surgery. It was a 16-hour surgery in order to spare my entire left leg because the cancer had taken over so much of my femur, growing onto my knee and my hip. Thankfully, chemo, 4 different strands of it, was able to kill it and save enough of my bone that they didn't have to take my whole leg, which if they did, I don't know if I'd be able to be a fireman or whatnot today. But I'll actually show you guys a quick picture of kind of the worst of the worst. So with everyone sitting here looking at me today, I mean, I'm standing up and right. I run into burning buildings for free, and I do it just fine. I can run, I can jump. But I'm going to show this photo real quick just to kind of give an idea that whenever I'm really having a bad day, I look back at a picture like this, and I kind of just tell myself, like, hey, this is me at 10 years old. In the midst of chemotherapy, when things were really brutal, no one knew what the full outcome was going to be. We just knew that there was a chance.
Now, Brian, when you guys were going through this, what was, I mean, I know obviously everybody wants to stay positive, but when you're going through something like this, it could be pretty tough. I mean, where was your parents' head at, or where was your head? I mean, you were 10, right? So I don't know.
What do you remember?
Yeah, what do you remember you feeling like,
Sure. So for me, it was in the very beginning stages. I know it was hard, and I still remember a lot of it, and I forgot a lot of it, but I do remember the first couple weeks of chemotherapy and the second, third, fourth month of chemotherapy. It was bad. I was down. I was upset. I turned 11 still going through chemotherapy, and I was 11 years old contemplating suicide. I mean, my parents stopped me twice from attempting to cut my wrist the wrong way with a knife. And that was just an 11-year-old boy who was in pain, lost his hair. There was a little bit of bullying going on because kids didn't understand at the time.
Now, Brian, was that mainly because of that, like the people making fun of you, the bullying, that a person feeling that, I don't know if that's elementary or junior high school at that time, your world, right? That's like the most important thing, probably what people think at the time is what's happening in your little social circle. And them bullying you, was that the main part of you feeling like, I guess, killing yourself? Or
I think that was the main part. And, aside from my family, outside of my family, I just felt alone. I only had, my immediate family who was in constant contact with me. All my friends kind of just disappeared. So I didn't have any other further outreach. So there wasn't until a little bit of a later date when it really became known to the community, and the community itself actually pulled itself together to do a lot for myself and my family. But I'd say it was mainly at the time due to the bullying, and that kids didn't understand. Kids didn't know what cancer was at the time. And I see that now. And I saw that at 12 and 13 and actually did lectures to schools about that cancer's not contagious.
Well, Brian, here's the better part. How many of those kids that you went to school with at the time that made fun of you or were in that social circle do you still even talk to today?
Not a single one of them. Not a single one of them.
That's so crazy. Let that be a message to anybody who's in high school, college, anywhere in your 25 or younger life where you validate how you live based on all these people's opinions that you really don't even care about, and they won't even know you probably in a couple of years because it's so crazy. When kids are in high school or junior high school, that's their whole life, right? It's like, this is it. It's the end of the world if someone makes fun of you. Meanwhile, you're never going to see these people ever again after you graduate, So it's like they don't really mean anything, but they place so much value on that little bubble that they live in. So really powerful. I mean, bullying, it's something that's not going away.
Especially with suicide, I just always think, man, if only a child understood that they're going to think differently in the next 3 years, the next 5 years, when they're in their 20s, when they're in their 30s, life is going to be so different. But yeah,
Sure.
everything at that age just seems so catastrophic. I'm sorry you went through that. That's wild. That's wild.
Don't be sorry. It was a blessing in disguise. I count my blessings every morning, and like I said, when I'm having a bad day, I pull up a picture of what a really bad day looks like. So I mean, as I started to get older and as I became cancer-free, February 18th of 2006, I stopped my final chemotherapy treatment. So 5 years after that, I was deemed cancer-free. So 2011, February 18th, 2011, I was deemed cancer-free, which I have been since then. And I mean, since that day in particular, because the type of cancer I had, osteogenic sarcoma is what it was called, right? Which is a rare bone cancer, typically found in the femur or one of your arms, typically in the limbs. It's usually kids go through it. So I found that because when I was going through chemo, when I was in the hospital, I was 3 days in and 2 days out, 4 days in and a day out, back and forth. I was happy. And the way that I got through that was being interactive with the nurses, being interactive inside of if a hospital has a playroom on a cancer ward, telling bad jokes. I mean, just doing anything I could to keep a smile on other people's faces, because even at that age, during all those crazy times, it just always made me happy when people laughed. So I've always never had a problem telling bad jokes because people still laugh. But it all stemmed from there. That one of the biggest things that I did to get through the downtimes, going through chemo and just feeling nothing but depressed, feeling like there was no hope, feeling like, I didn't want it tomorrow, was just realizing that, hey, even at that age, that somebody else probably needs me. And that's still today, 14 years later is still a driving force for me to make sure that I don't have that bad of a day, if that makes sense.
That's an awesome perspective.
I like to think so. I think the biggest thing that if anyone could get out of that is just to kind of realize that, if you're having a bad day, think of what your worst day has been. Think of what your neighbor's worst day might have been. Think of the last Facebook or Instagram post that you read about of somebody who developed COVID-19 and lost a family member, or someone who lost a family member to a car accident or a drunk driver. Just think of somebody else's worst day, and most likely it will put yourself in perspective. It does for me every day.
Yeah, Brian, I don't know if you ever heard the old saying, like, if everybody put their problems into a hat and they went around the room and you pulled out somebody else's problem, you'd take your problem back in a heartbeat, right? So
absolutely.
Well, so Brian,
I think we're all guilty there.
Powerful stuff. Obviously, you went through a lot. They cut off a portion of your foot, right? Was basically what it was, or explain that to us. Your femur. So what does that mean to you?
Sure. So when I had the limb sparing surgery, they removed the entire section of my left femur, right? And what they did is they replaced it with an allograft, a metal plate, and 12 screws at the time. And what that did, because the healing process took so long, and I was 10 years old, my growth plates got stunted. So I actually suffered from something called bone disuse atrophy. So my left leg is actually about 2.5 centimeters shorter than my right leg. So right now at this age and going forward, I'm suffering hip and back problems from it. There's nothing I could do about it. Which I'd rather deal with that than the other circumstance. But that wasn't the only surgery I had. I mean, another crazy extensive surgery that I had, which is why I'm able to do things I was able to do today, The first surgery to save my life back in 2006 was a 14-hour surgery. Back in 2012, I actually had what's called a vascular fibular allograft. Say that 3 times fast. And what that actually is, Dr. Samuel Kanan, who again, like I said, is my hero. He's the surgeon who operated on me, and he did the limb sparing surgery. I can do what I can do today because of that man and his team. What they actually did is they removed my lower right fibula back when I was 18, August 20th, 2013. They removed my entire lower right fibula, main artery or small artery, muscle, tissue, and vein, and they actually grafted it over to my left femur. And what that actually did was that actually took the allograft in my left femur, which was a dead bone. It wasn't a live bone. It was very fragile. All throughout my teenage years, I had to be very, very, very careful that I didn't break it, because if I did, even they didn't know what they were going to do. So upon completion of that surgery, what I would have is a live functioning left femur that produces bone marrow, calcium, live blood flow, heals itself, unlike what I had from 10 to 18. Okay, which is, I'm very thankful for technology. I'm very thankful for, what surgeons are capable of today. Otherwise, I wouldn't actually be able to obviously have that. I would be missing a leg right now. So, but because of that surgery is the main reason why today I'm able to do what they said I'd never be able to do. So, they said I'd never be able to be a fireman. I've been a fireman since around 2012, starting from a junior program up until now in the actual department.
Now, Brian, what made you want to get into the fire, like become a fireman? Like where'd that come from?
I guess it was multiple things. One, I was told I probably wouldn't be able to do it, so I decided I wanted to see if I could. And then another was just another, I think, was just being able to give back to the community. Back when I was sick and we were in our hardest times, my parents almost lost the home because they couldn't pay the bills. They couldn't put food on the table for the siblings because medical bills were stacking up in the hundreds of thousands. At the time, most of the operations and chemotherapy and stuff that I had didn't take my parents' insurance. So what ended up happening, and I still to this day have no idea how the word got out, but the fire department raised well over $30,000 for us through fundraisers. They donated 2 years in a row of Thanksgiving dinners, Christmas gifts, Easter baskets. Just the outpour from them was absolutely amazing, something that I could never forget, and that always stuck with me. Right here in the department that I'm in today, that always stuck with me. Plus the community itself in Selden, the middle school, the high school, the elementary school, the Bank of America, random small businesses, they all found out that I was battling cancer. My parents were facing financial struggles, and money was coming out of nowhere, food, clothes, school supplies, and that was another really big pushing drive, like, hey, I need to give back. I need to devote my time serving my community when, especially when they're in their time of need. So I think that was definitely the main cause of me wanting to be a fireman.
That's huge.
Wow.
So you end up becoming a firefighter in Long Island. Just for all the people listening or watching it, right? In Long Island, you become a firefighter, but it's not like being FD&Y, right? Where you're working in the city and you're getting paid. You're literally volunteering your services, getting paid nothing for this. You still need a day job. You're staying out all night. You're waking up at maybe 3 a.m., putting out a fire, going on a call, whether it's a call that's priority, whatever's happening, and then you still have to be at your day job. Like that's like crazy, man. And we commend you for that, and we praise you for that. That's huge. That's huge. I think everybody and Long Island could say the same thing, because without you, and people like you and all the volunteer firefighters, where would we be? So that's huge. That's awesome. We thank you for that. We thank you for your services. But what I want to do, Brian, is I want to bring it to the kind of current day where we're at now. You become a fireman. I know you end up becoming an EMT. You're still kind of training for that, right? I think you're kind of finishing that up. And
Yep, almost done.
You just finished it up?
Yep.
Awesome. Well, congrats to you.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Awesome. And you being a fireman EMT just in this COVID type world, I'm sure, and I wanted to save a certain amount of the talk today for that, because this is kind of really relevant. People want to know this type of stuff. What are you seeing? Where was everybody's head at? To be honest, where were they at 30 days ago to maybe where they were at 2 weeks ago to where they're at today? Because I know it's always been shifting. We want to kind of just hear a little bit about that, mindset-wise.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, relating directly to COVID-19 and everything that's going on, and just kind of being on the front lines and seeing the extra precautions that have been being taken, the seriousness level being brought up, obviously from, a nationwide, statewide, and then locally. A month ago, a lot of people weren't wearing masks, weren't wearing gloves, and it was kind of like, hey, it's another flu. But now that we see the spike in numbers, it's getting a lot crazier than I think we expected. As a first responder, and any other first responder can relate to it, you kind of have to have a dark sense of humor a little bit in order to be in this field, because
what does that mean, Brian? What do you see? What does that mean exactly? Tell us.
Well, you see a lot of crazy stuff. You see car accidents and dead people and people dying. You see people in their worst moments. You see older elderly women who just call 911 who need someone to talk to, which is still depressing, because it's like, she's 90 years old and she has no one to call. Where's her family? Like, when my parents are 90 years old, they're going to have someone to call. My phone's right here.
Yeah.
But I think because of just kind of the way that we're built, everybody was kind of taking it on a lighter level, but also the public was as well. If somebody had a cough, they were calling 911. Our ambulance calls just in Selden alone spiked up about 43%.
Well, that's what I want to talk about, Brian. Obviously, the shift from the city to Nassau, and now Suffolk's getting, right? It's getting like the late hit, right? Because it's like we're the furthest out. Like what are you seeing? And I don't know what you can or can't talk about, but what are you seeing? What is your average call looking like? Is it a lot of dead on arrivals? Is it just you have to pick people up and bring them somewhere? What's like the average EMT/firefighter call looking like right now?
Sure. So right now, I mean, we're taking heavy precautions. So right off the bat, normally we would get to an ambulance call, we'll say, of someone having a respiratory difficulty, and normally the driver, the EMT, an extra person, and the chief and a police officer would all go inside at the same time. Now it's just the paramedic and the EMT, and everybody else stays outside, and the paramedic EMT is going in with gloves, a face mask. If it's a COVID-19 positive patient, they're going in with the gown and goggles on, which is not something that I've even seen in the years that I've been in. But in the last 3 weeks, I've been on probably 13 cardiac arrests, and only one of them, I think, made it. And I think 3 or 4 of them passed from COVID-19, who were all elderly, which is very sad to see. So it's alive and kicking, and it's taking lives, and I definitely take the proper precautions. But also don't be so scared that you skip a step in the proper precautions, right? You want to make sure that you're paying attention. But I definitely saw a rise in people calling 911 for a cough, for a fever, which not everyone had the coronavirus or COVID-19. But we're seeing a lot of a mixture of, like I said, people with CHF, people with severe asthma, people with COPD, who are really taking the biggest hit from it. So be careful, watch out for your loved ones.
And this is not that it's normal for you. Obviously, right now, we're in extremely difficult times, and your job description has changed significantly.
Yes.
Just the fact that you're talking about having to wear a gown and goggles to walk into someone's house being something totally out of the norm. You've never seen it before. I yeah, all we can say is really thank you. This is, it's really crazy to know that people are going through this. I would like to bring up a story because I think the reason why we had Brian on this interview is because he's an incredible person. He has an absolutely unbelievably big heart. But I think the biggest thing that kind of sticks in my head from all that, surviving cancer, the amount of time that you spend serving kids with cancer, sitting in the hospital with them, sharing your story, giving them hope, you know, making friends with these kids, seeing them pass on from a cancer that you were able to live from has to be incredibly hard. So when we talk about loss, when we talk about suffering, like, you're not a stranger to that realm. And, you know, but you also haven't become significantly numb to it either. You know, 13 calls in the past
Right.
2 weeks of cardiac arrest where one person survived. I mean, that's, you know, how many people have never seen somebody go into cardiac arrest and die? And that's 2 weeks, 13. So the story that I want to bring up, and you may know what I'm going to bring up, but I remember we had a meeting and we went to go meet you at a Panera Bread. And I remember pulling up to the Panera Bread. And this is what I mean by Brian is not numb to suffering, loss, and people's pain. So something that is an everyday occurrence for him, things that he sees, you could tell that Brian was in a lot of pain that day because he felt for the family, specifically the daughter that went through this. But do you want to tell that story? When we walked up to Panera Bread, you were in a real, you could tell that you just had like adrenaline like flying off your skin, like you were really hopped up. And we were about to go sit down for a meeting that probably would have taken 45 minutes, you know, real boring meeting, you know, and and Brian's literally like jumping out of his skin because he'd just been through this incredible situation. But I believe, and I want you to tell a story, but I believe that God is using you in incredible ways. And that was proof to me that day, seeing you be there at that time for that reason. I know that these types of scenarios happen to you a lot. And I believe that God's using you. He's using your past. He's using your experience. He's using your heart to impact other people. So just tell us about that real quick encounter, if you could, and how it impacted you.
Sure. So it was Mother's Day a couple years ago. I don't remember exactly how many now, but awaiting to have a normal meeting at a Panera Bread. I was alerted by someone else there that I also knew, who knew that I was a fireman and knew that I was CPR certified. I wasn't in EMT class. I didn't have much knowledge of EMT techniques at all, but he knew that I've done plenty of CPR and been in the situation before. So he brought me outside, and take note, I'm in a full suit. It's brand new too. All right. But that didn't matter. It was Mother's Day, and a young woman, probably in her late 20s, was going to a late lunch with her grandfather. And they had about a 20-minute drive out to the restaurant that they were going to. And she had believed
it was her father. It was her father. It was her father.
Oh, yes. Okay. Was taking her out for Mother's Day. And yeah, her father was taking her out for Mother's Day. And he ended up going into cardiac arrest. I individually ended up removing him from the vehicle, noticing that he had no pulse, and immediately started CPR on him. And right away, I could tell that the situation wasn't as good as I would have liked it to be.
Meaning that you were performing CPR on a dead person.
I knew that I was performing CPR on a dead person, but because his daughter was standing right next to me screaming, "Do something, help, do something," In my mind, I just was saying a prayer and doing what I know to do CPR until more help arrives. 15 minutes later, somebody else had arrived who actually happened to be an ER nurse, who started compressions while I started to look for an AED that nobody had found at the time. Eventually, police ambulance had arrived. They hooked him up to an AED, and unfortunately, as expected, because of what I noticed, he did not make it. But I know I did, and all of the bystanders did everything that we could do to possibly help. To help him, and even more so, knowing the situation that we were in, help his daughter realize that we did everything that we could, and the EMTs and paramedics did everything that they possibly could in order to save her father. But obviously God had different intentions for him, and he was 69 years old. He was a beloved father of 3 kids, I found out, and 2 grandkids. And he was a godly man, so I learned. How that impacted me is, one, right off the bat, it made me realize that I need to be ready to do CPR at any time, which I always knew that. And 2 is just to count my blessings. I mean, I couldn't imagine being in a car ride, just with my father going to get a regular dinner and him passing away next to me. So that definitely helped me realize that. That one stuck with me for a while too, though, because I had a couple nightmares of that man's face, and just knowing that I wanted to save him. But as a first aider, a person who only does CPR, knowing there's literally nothing more that I could possibly do, definitely sat with me for a while. I had to talk it out with some people until, I realized that, hey, not everyone can be saved. I especially can't save everyone. I can only do a portion of God's work. But
yeah, that's tough, Brian. I mean, how many situations have you obviously, that was extremely random that you were put there. How many times have you been put in that type of situation? And maybe it was just the one time. I mean, I don't know.
In that specific type of situation, just sitting at a Panera Bread or a Starbucks or something?
I mean, when you had to perform CPR on somebody out of nowhere, or someone went into cardiac arrest, or some sort of situation where maybe it wasn't a call and you had to kind of call to action and just do something.
Probably only 6 or 7 times. I mean, I just saved my own brother the other day on his birthday. We were having family dinner, and he started choking on a piece of chicken about that big.
Really?
And I've never seen someone go blue in the face so fast. And everyone around the table starts screaming, Brian! He's choking. So I performed a Heimlich maneuver. I made him go by the sink so we didn't make a mess. And I popped a piece of chicken out of him, and we continued his birthday dinner.
Wait, how old's your brother again?
He's gonna be 20. He just turned 27.
That's great. He must have been hungry.
That's a lot of pressure for one person. Everybody turns. Yeah. Where's Brian?
Yeah. Save his life now, right?
So, but he turned it. He was okay. He was okay.
Oh, goodness. So speaking of God's intentions, what do you feel like God's intentions for you and your life are, and why do you do what you do?
Sure. And right off the bat, just to be completely honest, back from the beginning of me going through cancer and battling and beating and having all these surgeries, I wasn't necessarily truly a godly person, and I'm still expanding or growing my spiritual strength. I've definitely grown a lot closer with God over the last 6 months in particular, which maybe I'll touch on that if you guys don't mind or want. So maybe anyone who has the same issues, maybe I could give them some hope and help them dig themselves out of a hole. But I didn't pick up a Bible or believe in God probably up until I was 18, after I had my double leg surgery. And then even then, it was never really, I thought I got lucky. I thought I lived by chance. I didn't necessarily realize that God is the one who saved me. God obviously had different intentions, a different path, or a particular path that he wanted me to live that I just didn't see. And I'm still figuring it out. I'm still getting the fog out of the lens. I'm still, trying to find the right path to go down. But I think I would say that I think God's intentions for me and why he saved me multiple times. I probably only have a couple of lives left if I have 9 lives like a cat. I think his intentions are for me to serve as many people as I can until the day I take my last breath. He's got me out of a lot of situations. Now I realize it was him who's gotten me out of these situations. But, going through as just to touch a little bit on kind of what I'm talking about, digging yourself out of a dark hole. Going through my teenage years, I was very rebellious. I was basically handicapped all throughout my teenage years. I couldn't go out and have fun and run and jump and play sports and do all that fun stuff a normal kid does. And I think it caught up to me over the years, probably closer to my drinking age, where I was really able to. Now I have 2 good legs, and now I can run and jump and go around and do whatever I want and try to be, not worry about the consequences and feel like a normal person, so-called normal person, and hung out with the wrong people at the wrong times and basically, developed a drinking problem with all the crazy things that I went through. You'd think somebody like myself who has beat one of the rarest bone cancers in America would never do such a thing, but it happened. There's a lot of things deep down inside that I was holding on to for a long time. What I thought was a lost childhood. 60% of my family has passed away, and I'm a big family person. So I love getting family together, but all I have is the immediate household, basically. I still think about the bullying back in high school, even though I'm never going to see those people again. And when I do, they're like, Brian Goff. I'm like, who are you? I'm like, oh, we were in elementary school together. I'm like, oh, sorry. But and things got really bad. Things got really bad for me, and I couldn't really necessarily explain why. I think just pulling all the sorrow from the past years and putting it all deep down inside, and then plus it does have to do with a lot of the things that I've seen in the fire service as well, kind of builds up. And I have mentored a lot of children with cancer who have passed away, and as much as I try to be all sunshine on the outside, that's gotta sit with you somewhere. And I'm very good at letting things ball up. I was very good at letting things ball up until I kind of started to figure out ways to find an outreach that I'm comfortable with, or find ways to let go of my sorrows or my stress or my disappointments, right? Everybody messes up, and I'm very hard on myself. But yeah, kind of just going back to that, I developed a drinking problem probably about a year ago. It got really bad, and my breaking point that I think really helped me stop that, and this was only probably 6 months ago, was falling asleep on a park bench in a full suit, which is, I think about it right now, and it's crazy to think about, because I know what my life is worth. I know how much of an impact I'm supposed to have on people. I know that I'm supposed to help a tremendous amount of people with what I went through, and I still can. I'm not letting that define me. It's just a situation that I went through that I'm handling now, and I'm better than ever. I'm happy. I know where I'm going, but I think out of all that rambling, kind of picking little pieces out of what I've been through in the recent, right? You wanted to come to the now. I think my main message to come out of that, especially while I still battle my demons, which most of them have been handled, is really figure out your purpose and find that one thing, right? I go back to, and I haven't done it in a while. That's probably why I ended up in a hole. Find your worst or your best time, whatever's going to motivate yourself more. I mean, what motivates me more is looking back at when I was a bald-headed kid basically on a ventilator, battling cancer for my life, and that kind of shoots me back on the straight track. So if somebody I have a friend of mine who had the same struggle. He was in a severe car accident and wasn't supposed to live. Was on a ventilator in a coma for 9 months, and now he's basically a semi-professional bodybuilder. He was never supposed to be able to walk, talk, breathe, eat, nothing. And even still today, if he finds himself on a bad path, he took my recommendation. He looks back at himself on that ventilator, and it draws him back on the track. So, I mean, just for some people it's good experiences, some people it's bad experiences. But for me, it's looking back at that time. But I'm just grateful. I'm just very grateful that I've had my ups, my downs, and you know, I am where I am today.
Well, Brian, that's powerful. I commend you for being so vulnerable to be able to admit some things like that, because I think so many people probably battle with those inner demons. I can only imagine how many people are watching this or listening to this today that is a paramedic, is an EMT, is a cop, is in some sort of civil service type of job that deals with that works their ass off, right? And then gets home. They work their butt off. They save some lives, and they just need that drink when they get home. And before they know it, it turns into a drink every night when they get home. And before they know it, they can't live a day without having that drink, where they kind of get like addicted to the, letting loose part of it, because they need to just let off steam. And it could be a doctor. It could be a lot of people in different situations, and I commend you for kind of just bringing that up and talking about it, because I think it's a lot of things a lot of people don't like to talk about,
Well, we can all pretend that everything's perfect,
Of course.
You survived cancer, and now you're just a saint, but everybody's got their demons, and everybody has, their vices. And I love what you said, is that you're overcoming, what's the term? Overcoming to become, and constantly in growth mode, and the fact that you can look at your life and look at those scenarios and see like, hey, like I was lost and I'm trying to get found,
Absolutely.
And I love the fact that you're working on your spiritual life. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I figured I had to try something, because I couldn't go down any further. If it went down any further, it was going to be permanently, and I don't think anybody wants that, especially with the gift I've been given.
So did anyone find you on the park bench, or did you wake up?
That's the real story. Was somebody poking you with a stick to think you were dead?
No. I woke up at like 7 a.m. and was like, where the hell am I? And didn't remember getting there. I found a 6-pack of beer underneath the bench that I knew it was mine, because it was the only kind of beer that I liked. Mm-hmm. And I walked out of that park with my head so far down, and I just started crying, honestly, because I didn't see myself ever getting to that point of a low. And I did. I mean, for the next couple weeks, I mean, I went to work, locked myself in my room, went to work, and just all of that was self-reflection. Like, what are you going to do? What am I going to do with my life? Am I going to waste the second chance that I have at life? And I still contemplate that in the morning when I got to wake up for work. Are you going to be 5 minutes late and waste your chance? Or are you going to be 5 minutes early and take advantage of your chance, right? You got to put things in perspective here.
Well, two things to that, Brian, right? Two just points that just popped in my mind before I forget.
Sure.
What was worse, right? Just for people listening to this, the fact that Brian, and I'm sure many people can relate to this, because nobody's a saint. I know I'm not. I've had that situation, Brian, where I woke up, where the hell am I? I think everybody's had that really bad night. So is the bad night, maybe I had a little too much to drink, and I woke up, and it's like, how'd I end up here? I know better than this. God granted me a second life to know better and maybe do better than this. Or B, who the hell was I hanging out with that left me here, that maybe I shouldn't hang out with anymore? Because that's messed up that they left me on a park bench, which is part two to that, which is something to think about, and something I'm sure you've thought about already. And you don't need to comment on that, right?
I know. I think I just saw a light bulb.
Because I know that would definitely be something I think about. Like, I'm hanging out with these guys. I mean, left me there, man.
Fortunately and unfortunately, it was a deed of my own. It was by myself. Went to a beach. Was like, all right, I'm gonna clear my thoughts and drink one beer, but bought a 6-pack or 2 6-packs. That doesn't make sense. Clear my head with one beer and buy two 6-packs.
But yeah, water under the bridge, Brian. We get it, and we know obviously you've been working on many things. Like you said, your spiritual journey that was months ago, and a lot's changed obviously with COVID. I think everybody needs things to put things in perspective sometimes, and I think the fact of what's happened with COVID and you just seeing what you're seeing, and I know we talked about this prior to the call, just kind of has put life in perspective for you again, right? Because sometimes you need to kind of fall down a couple of times before you get it.
Sure.
But even more importantly, you know, where does Brian's journey go? You know, where is the next 5 years? How does he plan on giving back and living this second chance in life that he's been granted with? Like, where do you see yourself? Like, what are your plans?
Sure. So I mean, there's obviously a lot that I want to do. There's a lot that anybody wants to do within the next 5 years. I mean, for me in particular, definitely continue to grow my spiritual life. I think that needs to continue getting closer to number one in my life. Okay, I'm not going to lie and say that it's number one. I'm still growing that spiritual belief. I'm still finding my relationship with God. And it's, you know, like I said, it's definitely getting a lot closer by the day, or the more that I start to dive in a little bit more spiritually. But you know, within the next 5 years, my main goals are really going to be to really develop myself mentally, physically, and spiritually, to make sure that I'm able to continue serving my community. I'm able to answer a call of someone in need, you know, whether it's a friend, somebody outside of my own network, whether it's, you know, someone with a child battling cancer who might not have any hope. I'd like to get back to giving some of my time helping, you know, these little warriors again, which I put on hold for a little bit. And on a 5-year mark from now, which I actually just mapped out last week, is in 5 years, I'm looking to start to open up a nonprofit organization for children with cancer, to start to build up sort of a foundation to eventually hopefully get grants and loans and donations to build a center for kids to have a little getaway to go to, where they can have a safe place, kind of a quarantine center or a fun zone for kids of all different kinds that are battling, whether it's osteogenic sarcoma like I did, or leukemia, or any type of severe disease or cancer like that. I want to get started on within the next 5 years. And then obviously, you know, growing myself into different businesses and making sure that my family in the future is set. But all in all, if you didn't notice, kind of it all has to do with giving back. The next 5 years, I'm going to be giving back as much as possible. That's kind of an overview of what I'm looking at and hoping for.